Jason,
Yo,
welcome here, man.
thank you.
Thank you for joining us, for saying yes to this.
Very happy to be here. Always excited. It was fun to be with you guys when we met in Rosenort. So
That was in July. That's like almost 6 months ago.
Yeah.
Maybe exactly 6 months ago.
yeah, it's a long time ago now. Should do it again.
We should do it again. It'd be really fun. Let's do it in the new year, January or February. I'd be
Yep.
game.
I'm in.
Yeah, man. Okay, so I'm pumped for this discussion. I'm pumped for this conversation for a couple of reasons. First off, I'm really excited because you are a good friend. And so to be able to do this with you is a huge privilege. I think I don't know how many years ago. I want to say something like 5 or 6 years when I first met you at a youth workers retreat. And do you
That's
recall
gotta
this?
be like,
Maybe more, eh? Is it like 7, 8 years ago? No.
I think it's even longer than that. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, I was very new to Church of the Rock stuff, and just based on who came with,
Okay.
it would have been, within my first or second year on staff at Church of the Rock. So that was somewhere in the 2011
No.
range. Yeah. Yeah, it was a long time ago.
I think that's where we first connected.
Yeah.
And then we started going for haircuts together.
Yeah. Well, because you had the sweetest hair.
You were like, where do you get your haircut? And
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, I've got this guy that I go see. You like, can I go get my... I'm like, sure.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Yeah, I remember that. We went into like an apartment building.
Yeah,
And in
sketchy
this dude's
apartment.
bathroom,
Absolutely.
all the guys were watching basketball.
Yeah.
There was like, what, 10, 15 people there
Oh, yeah,
just
just
watching
sitting,
basketball,
hanging
hanging out.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was the best haircut experience though. Just sitting in the bathroom. It was great.
We did that quite a number of times.
Yeah.
And
And then just
then-
going for food.
We started eating a lot of chicken. It
Well,
was chicken specifically that we
It's my
started eating.
favorite. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm going to throw it out here. I'm going to
Okay.
look right in the camera for this one because it's important. I make the best fried chicken, hot Nashville sandwich you'll ever eat.
Ever. I still
Yeah.
have to try it though.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I can't confirm this yet.
Yeah. So the last time I did it,
Yeah.
it was, I made it for 5 people
Okay.
and it generated 12 grand. So that's sort of where I'm at in terms of how much it cost for me to fry some
You
chicken.
made it for 5 people and it generated 12 grand?
Yeah, there was a very generous company that was gonna.
How good is this burger? Dang.
Sponsor Safe Families.
That's awesome, man. So yeah, we went for chicken a lot. We tried it a few different places. Mm-hmm. And then we just kept hanging out. I think it was maybe, I don't know how many years ago now, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, that you were moving from the church you were working at and stepping into simple gatherings, more of like a house church model.
Yeah,
And kind of got to hear you processing that and kind of share what you were thinking and learning about church and community. And I feel like I learned so much from your processing. It felt like, oh, here's somebody else doing some processing and putting language to maybe what's going on inside of my head. So I really appreciated that and still appreciate it. I think many times I think of you as someone that I can go to and I'm like, what the heck are we doing with House Church? Let me talk to Jason and see what they're doing.
well, I wish, I wish I had learned as much as you did from my processing.
You didn't?
I'm sure. No. I mean, like, I would like if people are learning from me, I don't
Yeah.
know why I'm not learning from myself.
You are
know?
learning from yourself.
I know. I'm probably too sarcastic for my own good. No, and it was great.
Yeah.
And I remember, we were out for chicken.
Yeah.
And you were just in the process of discerning sort of
Yes.
what you were doing
Yes.
with what you're doing now.
my
you
life.
weren't quite sure if you were going to
Yeah.
step into that role,
Yeah.
pastoring, church
Yeah.
planting.
Yeah.
So no, it's cool. It's been fun to process together.
It has been really good.
Yeah, no, and you've been a very valuable friend
Dope.
and someone who I can do the same thing with.
Yeah.
And so to just have someone I can talk with and like share those passions with and like quickly jump into like a deep conversation.
Yeah.
That's something I've always appreciated about you.
Dope.
Is just like moving right into that. Whereas I like to keep things mostly humorous, you know, like,
Sure,
yeah, I just want to laugh. Yeah. That's where I'm at.
Okay, so we're going to talk a little more about Simple Gatherings and what you've been doing, you and Hannah, with your church community. But first, I want to talk about something that's dear to your hearts, because a big part of your story is community. Like, you are passionate about community today. You value community. You've given your life to like creating community for people. And a lot of that has to do with the way you were brought up and what you've experienced in your upbringing and in your life journey up until this point. So maybe walk us through, like, what is Safe Families? Why is this so important to you? What are you doing? And how does community like play a part in this?
Yeah, sure. So Safe Families is an organization that's international.
Okay.
And its main focus is working with like families who would be in crisis, who are going through just different moments in their life that are putting a lot of tension on the home environment.
Right.
And that can be like all sorts of stuff, right? Like
Right.
crisis in a lot of ways is going to be like self-defined. What's a crisis for me isn't going to be a crisis for someone else necessarily.
Right.
But it's something that's adding an immense amount of pressure and strain on a family.
Right.
And Safe Families in particular is working with families where if you see what's going on, if you were to not intervene at all or provide anything, it's likely that those situations would lead to maybe some social service like involvement in those families.
Like CFS or something like that.
Yeah, and so we're
Okay.
trying to just connect with these families before that happens and prevent that from ever happening.
Wow.
And we're going to naturally generally be working with families that are pretty isolated
Okay.
and don't have community.
Right.
Most people who go through a crisis, it won't ever get to that point because they have people that they can turn to. They have
Wow.
families, friends, communities, whatever it is that are in their life that are going to support them. So
Wow.
like in Rosenort, where I'm from, if someone passes away, if someone is born, or if there's like a surgery, you're getting a meal for minimum like every day for a month. Like everyone's getting food. It's always happening.
Like the community just comes around and says, hey, we're making sure you're getting fed.
Yeah.
We're bringing meals. Okay.
And it's not just one church that's doing it. It's
Okay.
like all of the different churches together are hearing about that
Wow.
because the community is small. And lots of people don't have that
Wow.
in any way, whether it's a town or like
Sure.
a group of 5 people or whatever it is. So
Yeah.
those people are at higher risk of that.
Right.
And so that's Safe Families is just working with families like that.
Right.
And so we do that by mobilizing the church. And so our goals are to like bring support and stability
Yeah.
to that family,
Yeah.
to prevent child welfare involvement and essentially to keep families together,
Right.
to prevent child abuse and neglect from happening.
Right.
We want to mobilize the church.
Okay.
You know, there's lots of people out there who we would love to see doing this, but for us, we know the church, we know that it's
Yes.
this group of people who are mandated to love, to care, to be there for those who are in need. And it's part of like what the church is,
Yes.
what a Christian is. And so that's
Why
the
we
group of
exist.
people
Yeah,
we
yeah.
want to just encourage and mobilize and equip to be able to be present in these families' lives,
Wow.
to just be able to care for them, be like their family, to
Okay.
love them, to serve them, to support them, to empower them,
Wow.
to keep their families together.
Wow. Would you consider the people you're working with marginalized? And by that I mean, do you think in general we overlook parents that are actually struggling to find people to help them, support them through relationship? Are they marginalized in that sense?
I mean, for sure, the majority of families that would be using Safe Families resources
Yep.
would be marginalized. But one thing that is interesting to me, at least, is that there's all these families who would not technically fit into the marginalized category,
Okay.
who will never express the struggles that are happening.
Expand on that. What do you mean by that?
Well, I mean, So
Yeah.
in the community that I live in,
Yeah.
it's a small community.
Okay.
It's a very prosperous community,
Okay.
like quite wealthy. Most families are doing really well, are working.
So in terms of income, they're like in a good
Yeah.
space. Okay.
But that doesn't mean that there isn't a lot of depression or
Right.
anxiety about different things. It doesn't mean that the home life is always good. But generally, and I think this is probably true, sadly, in churches, is there does seem to still be this huge perception that we need to look good.
Still,
I'm a
hey?
Christian now, and
Sure.
so in front of other Christians, I need to appear like
Perfect.
I am
Got it all together.
holy enough. Yeah,
Sure.
I'm a good parent.
Yeah.
I've got it figured out, you
Yeah.
know, like all these different things. And
Yeah.
yet there's all of these people who would still be struggling in some way,
Yeah.
who are in some cases struggling because they have a lot of people they know, but they don't have a lot of people who actually really know them, who wouldn't
Wow.
know that actual struggle in their life, and who they feel like they can share that with, and it's not going to get out to everyone.
Wow.
And that they can work through that. And so in some ways, like whether you're in a marginalized community or not, it's very easy for everyone to struggle from relational poverty.
Yes. 100%.
And that
Yeah.
seems to be in the West, I think, a huge problem. And so the need for something like Safe Families isn't just there for those who we would typically have seen as,
Right.
you know, in need or
Right.
marginalized. It's actually expanding.
I love that you're clarifying that when someone's in need, it's not just like a need of money or financial resources or food. It can be that. And then it can be, I just need someone to help me walk through my depression or some mental stuff that I'm working through. It's like you're increasing the scope that we look at when we go, what's the need?
Yeah. And I mean, like for us, so my dad, when he was 18, he worked at a sawmill in Belize.
Oh, wow.
A board backfired and hit him in the head, causing significant brain damage. So he has severe epilepsy.
Wow.
You know, it wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that he would have had hundreds or at least 100 seizures every month
That's insane.
for my like childhood and growing up years. Both him and my mom immigrated to Canada. My mom
Okay.
from Mexico, my dad from Belize.
Wow.
They met in Ontario. My dad had a grade 3 education. My mom had a grade 6 education. So,
Okay.
I mean, already, so you've got mental
Yeah.
illness,
Yeah.
you know, brain damage,
Yeah.
lack of education.
Yeah.
English is not your first language.
Yeah.
And then they moved to Rosenort from Ontario because my mom had a sister there, and they heard the school was small and good. And so when I was 3, we moved to Rosenort, and then my dad lost his driver's license. He
Oh,
was no
wow.
longer legally allowed to work because it was too dangerous because his epilepsy kept getting worse and worse.
Okay.
And so I was 3, that's 30 years ago. So we went on welfare, and
Okay.
I had 3 other siblings. I have a sister who's younger than me, and then the youngest are twin boys. So my parents wanted 3 kids,
Okay.
and then Tim decided to tag along at the end,
Okay.
and then there were 4.
Nice.
We were living in a 1-bedroom like house.
Wow.
It was tiny, made the local newspaper for being a big family in a small house.
What?
What everyone wants to be famous for, you know? And, but yeah,
Did
like,
they help or did they just put you in the newspaper?
no, I mean, yeah, I guess it helped because eventually so what happened though is because of that, there was always huge financial burdens for
see.
my mom couldn't work.
Okay.
Welfare was like $30,000 a year for
Okay.
a family of 6. That's not a lot of
Yeah.
income.
Yeah.
So the grocery bills would often start racking up at the local like grocery store.
Sure.
Like, you know, they couldn't afford to buy a vehicle, all these
Yeah.
different things. So throughout my whole childhood, you know, the community, the different churches, gave my parents multiple different vans.
Wow.
One would break down, and then someone else would have a used vehicle that they would just give to my parents. They bought the house next door to where we were living, which
Okay.
is like a 4-bedroom, 5-bedroom home, much bigger.
Yeah.
And then set my parents up with like a rent to own situation.
Wow.
So that was like, not only did they essentially give them a home, they set it up so that one day they would be able to be the owners
Amazing.
of that home.
Yeah.
Anonymously, people would regularly pay off the grocery bill for my
Wow.
family. We would get Christmas presents from all sorts of different people
Wow.
because my parents wouldn't have been able to afford like a lot of the stuff.
Hmm.
I played every sport, including hockey. Everyone
Nice.
knows how expensive hockey is, and so did my brothers.
Yeah.
And people would always pay for registration.
Yeah. That's incredible.
And then on top of that, my mom would often have to be in the hospital with my dad. There were times where my dad would be in the hospital for like a month at a time.
Okay.
So my mom would have to go, and we would regularly stay at different people's houses for night. And never once throughout my whole childhood did a social worker ever come into the home. Never once
Wow.
was there a fear of like apprehension
Wow.
or intervention in any way.
Wow.
And that's not to say that those things aren't ever good or aren't ever needed.
Right.
But for a family to go through all of that and not to experience that is a testament to
Community.
the community.
Yeah.
And that community so fully wrapping around my family
Yeah.
to support it.
Yeah.
And so for me, Safe Families isn't just like a cool idea that maybe can work. It's something that long before Safe Families existed,
Yeah.
right? This would have been in like 93. Safe Families only came into existence in 2003.
Okay.
Long before that, you know, this community was doing Safe Families for me.
Wow.
And so the need, you know, there's need everywhere.
Yeah.
Whether it looks like, whether you see it on the surface
Yeah.
or not,
Yeah.
there's huge need.
Huge need.
Yeah. And so for me, it's just like a real personal ministry that
Yeah.
I'm a part of because I lived as the family in
Yeah.
crisis
Yeah.
and received support from a loving, compassionate community.
Yeah.
And now I get to be on the other end. And so, you
Wow.
know, there's times where we give and there's times where we receive.
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
I like to think we receive so that we can give. You know, I think when you experience something like what you just described in your family, I think the reason, or I think a big reason why we experience the grace of God in that way is because he wants us to then like be like, it's not just for you. It has to come out. I think that's a healthy way of doing it. So I think that's amazing that you're doing that through Safe Families and encouraging and mobilizing the church
Right.
to do that. Let's send people into their house church groups
Yeah.
and get them to identify the needs that they see around them. Like if we take a moment and reflect, what are the needs I see in my community and the relationships that I have and the friendships that I have and the people that I know? Where do I see a need where someone is struggling and needs the church body or me to come alongside them and support them in this way? What's the need? Can you identify it? And I'd love for people to look underneath the surface. Maybe even ask the question, that person that you think doesn't have a need, pause for a moment, reflect on their life for a second, and go, is there maybe an unseen need that I'm not aware of that I might identify if I just pause?
Right.
Dope. Okay. Let's do that and then we'll keep going from there.
It's good.
Okay, so before we go any further, if I'm sitting in house church right now and I'm the person that feels like I'm in great need, right? I'm the person that feels like I'm lacking emotionally or whatever it is, like I'm the person in need right now. What would you say to that person?
Well, I would just tell them I love them. But
Nice.
I think what we're looking for here
Yeah.
is we all go through different seasons.
Mm.
Some seasons we're the person who needs something,
Yeah.
and sometimes we're in the position where we can give something.
Yeah.
Usually it's not so cut and dry. Usually we're like living in the tension of both.
Yeah.
And so there is a level of vulnerability and humility that is required to say, I am in need. And that goes against everything that we think is important.
Yeah.
We're constantly trying to show the world that we don't need anyone, that we can do it on our own, that we want to. Those are huge values
Yeah.
to us as people. And so to be able to break down that sort of feeling and set a different tone and example for people in your community to say it's okay to express my need, to share my baggage, to share my temptations, my hurts, my struggles, is important. And to be willing to get to a place where you can say, where you're not trying to compare your need to someone else's, because that's going to be a block for people too, where they think, oh, well, that person has shared that their struggle is that's way more important or bigger or more serious than mine. So I shouldn't share mine because I don't want to like take away from them getting help, or I don't want to like share when it's not that big a deal. I should be able to get over it on my own, whatever those lies are.
Right.
And so in some ways, by not expressing the needs that we have, and in that way not participating in community, because community is give and take between people.
Yeah.
We actually sort of end up stealing something from people.
Yeah.
And it hurts us and them by us not sharing our struggles.
Yeah.
And so I would just want to encourage anyone to share whatever it is, whether it's big or small, and to trust the people in your life with that thing.
A lot of this can happen in a safe space like your house church. It's a great starting point for this. Maybe give us some insights, some ideas of how safe families, like some practical ways that you are actually supporting people. Give us some ideas of how we as a community can support others as well. Like once we identify a need, how do we now come along someone and actually help them?
Yeah, that's a great question.
Or help each other.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And I
that's
think
better language than help them, help each other. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, you made a great point. It's a great house church is a great way to do it. I think small communities, that is the advantage of a small community is its ability to create that safe space and to provide really personal support to someone. Because you can get to know each other and you're walking alongside each other and getting to know what are the actual needs and then how do we as a community support. So Safe Families though, does it through 4 different volunteer roles.
Okay.
So I'll go through them, but then really like people in the small group in a house church, whatever it is, are able to then take on those different roles, whether you're doing it through Safe Families formally or you're just doing it as a community. And so the 4 roles are resource friends. And so those are volunteers who sign on with Safe Families who want to help meet sort of physical, material, tangible needs. That can be like in the winter, if you meet someone like a family, let's say you have a single parent who has 4 kids. This is not a hypothetical, I guess. I'm thinking of someone very specific.
Sure.
And they are working really hard to care for their kids and do all sorts of stuff.
Yeah.
But they are running out of time every day and out of energy and capacity to maybe get certain things cleaned that they wanted to, shovel their walk, all these different things, get to the grocery store. So resource friends would be people who would, find someone who maybe is unable to, for whatever reason, shovel their drive. And just go out and do something tangible like that, or go on a grocery run for someone. So that's what a resource friend would do.
Okay.
A family friend is very simply that. It's someone who's either connecting with the parent or with the children, mentoring, supporting, maybe doing some like respite for them during the day, being there to send an encouraging text or phone call to a parent who's going through a hard time. Just becoming the friend of that family.
Dope. Okay.
Our host families are volunteers that would care for a child overnight in their home.
Oh, nice.
From one night up to sort of 3 months consecutively, depending on what the crisis is. So there's all sorts of scenarios.
Okay.
You know, again, lots of people just don't have that. So for us, we think, well, is that a crisis? Well, it is a crisis
When you don't have it.
when you don't have anyone to watch your kids, and there's things that you need to get done and you can't get those things done, or something comes up and you don't have someone to watch your kids.
Right.
And that thing that seems so small becomes really big.
Gotcha.
And then our fourth volunteer role is our family coaches.
Okay.
And they are there to support the host family
Okay.
and the volunteers, as well as the placing parents. So they're connecting, they're doing follow-up, they're connecting with the parent to make sure that like they're comfortable with what's going on with the volunteers, that they feel like they have a plan for how to get out of that crisis or whatever it might be, that they're connecting with the volunteers to hear about how are things going with the kids, are there any supports and resources you need? And so the family coaches are doing those sorts of things.
Wow. Okay.
And in any church, wherever it is, we know that not everyone has the same gifts,
Yes.
the same passion,
Yes.
same skills, you know, any of those things. And so not everyone should be a host family. If everyone was a host family, there would be no resource people to help with material goods and needs that people would have. In a house church, there are going to be people in that group who are like, oh, I could probably watch a kid or a couple kids in my home overnight, you know, a few times a year. There'd be other people who would say, I would want to do this. You know, I'd want to mentor a parent, or I'd want to like support and encourage them or take them out for coffee. And, you know, there's people in your house church that would maybe want to do that sort of thing. There's people in your house church who would like to just sort of help coordinate and facilitate those relationships and do the follow-up. And when we see ourselves as a community, and not individuals who need to do everything, but we see ourselves as being part of the body, part of the family with specific things that we can offer to people, and then saying, what are the resources we have? Like physical resources, relational resources, emotional, like whatever it is, what do we have in our house church? And then how can we use that to bless families around us? So maybe each house church just says, we know one family in need. Maybe it's someone in the house church. Maybe it's someone in the community. And you just say, we are going to adopt that family for a year. We are going to be here to just bless them, encourage them, support them, walk through stuff with them. And the pressure is off you then, right? Like that's where I think like oftentimes if we're presenting, say, families, someone thinks, well, I don't want to do foster care or whatever it might be, something that looks like that. I don't. So then they think, well, there's nothing for me. Well, but if you're a community of people doing it, each of you can take on a part of it and do it together. And now you're not alone. And all of a sudden, this person who went from being in emotional poverty or isolation, feeling alone, having no resources that they know they can turn to, they all of a sudden have a community that's surrounding them, displaying Jesus to them constantly through their love and care for them, but also in the way that they do it as a community of people. And there's something really obviously beautiful and powerful about doing it together
as community. Let's have discussion about that. Once you identify a need in someone else's life, as you do that, and this needs to go beyond just this morning and this space here, like think about this throughout the week, have conversations about it beyond just the conversation right now in your house church. Once you identify a need, how can you now support someone? I think the 4 roles that you described are really helpful to put a language to the function that we can fill. I think there's so many ways that we could actually do this. And I think those are great starting points. But reflect, how can I help someone? What's the little I have to offer? How can I bring my community alongside that? Maybe we want to do this as a house church together. Maybe I'm calling a few friends and going, hey, why don't we take turns helping this family out? You watch this kid that week, I'll watch them this week. Like find creative ways to actually support people. Let's reflect on that, come up with some ideas, and then we'll wrap it up.
That's great.
Okay. So before we wrap things up, simple gatherings. Everything you've been describing here with Safe Families and community and the work you've been doing is very much connected to house church model that you're running in simple gatherings. Maybe very quickly, give us a short summary of why you decided to approach something like simple gatherings. We've been talking a lot about community, and we see the value in this, in what we're doing right now. But it is really helpful, and maybe I'm speaking more so for myself here. It's really helpful to talk with others that are on a similar journey and go, what are the challenges you're facing? What are some of the beautiful things you're seeing? And it's been really amazing to see how we're not the only ones on this journey of rediscovering what it means to follow Jesus through community. I think it's one thing to be like going through it ourselves, and then to see how God is doing this like globally is really cool.
Yeah.
And so I'd love to hear how you guys are doing this. What's your experience been with house church? How did you end up doing this? Why did you end up doing this? I find it way more messier than big church. But yeah, talk me through like how you ended up here and what it's been like for you.
Yeah. Well, let me say
Yeah.
why, we're not doing it because we don't like big churches.
Yes.
So that's like, let's just get that out of the way.
Yeah.
Because generally that's like what people think. If you're doing house church
that
because you hate big church, or
Right.
you think it's all evil or something.
Right.
And it's not because it's the only way or even the right way or the best way.
Yeah.
We're doing it partly because we feel specifically called to it.
Yeah.
And we have, a real vision and heart for it. And, there's specific values that we have that we think are probably easier in some ways to live out or experience in the house church. One of those is how important the messiness is for real community and for real unity. Because you're right, like house church is messier.
Yeah.
And it should be, because you have people who are coming together to hopefully share their lives with each other. And the way that we do house church specifically is set up in hopes that people are forced is the wrong word, but
Encouraged,
encouraged,
nudged.
to see themselves
Yeah.
as a part of the church.
Yeah.
And to see themselves as important
Yeah.
and having something very important for everyone else who is there.
That's helpful. I think that clarification is key. That we don't do it because it's the right way or because we hate something else, right? And we see how Jesus in John 17 talks about unity, and he prays for unity. We want a church that is unified in Manitoba, in Canada. I love how these little towns, we don't have this in Winnipeg yet, but all these little towns, when you're driving in, they'll say the churches of Niverville welcome you. The churches of Morris welcome you. I love that concept of like, hey, this is like not one specific church versus another. We're like doing this together. The churches of the city welcoming you in.
Yeah.
And I think unity is so key. It is so important. I think that's why we're even doing this. I think there's certain things we're working through in New City right now. Logistical stuff, directional stuff. We're constantly working on things. And I think to know that there's people within simple gatherings that possibly might be a good resource. Where we go, we're actually trying to figure out how to do this with Kidsmen or with worship or with whatever it is. And go, there's actually people over here working through similar things and maybe have some really good ideas we just haven't thought of, or maybe have a different take on something that's worth learning from. I think to have that resource available because we're part of the same body and have a relationship and can like walk together is amazing.
I agree.
Thank you so much again for joining this discussion, for being willing to share with us your story, being willing to share with us how Safe Families is keeping families together and how we as a church community can actually be a part of that. I want to encourage anyone to reach out to you, Jason, if they're interested in volunteering specifically with Safe Families, but then to even think beyond that and go, how do we do this as a church community? And I know that's your heart is like, if someone wants to partner with Safe Families, let's do it, but don't limit the way that you can serve. And yeah, wherever you can, however you can, please do that.
Yeah.
But I do want to acknowledge that what you're doing, because I know you even stepped into a new role as of recently. You were overseeing just the Manitoba chapter of Safe Families for a while, and now you are regional or national?
So I oversee like the Western Canada portion of it.
Yeah, and I see how you are passionate about this and acknowledge that this is important work because it's the kind of work Jesus is interested in. So thank you. Thank you for bringing us into that world and challenging us. I think I'd love to find ways to follow up on the discussions that were had in House Church today and go, okay, how do we do this? You know, how do we do this as a community? How do we actually walk alongside people well? Let's be intentional. How do we bring what we have to the table, even if it seems small? I'm looking forward to that. So thank you so much for being a part of this. And I'm excited. I'm looking forward to what ongoing community and unity looks like with Simple Gatherings and with other communities out there that are passionate about following Jesus and doing community well. Whatever happens in the new year, I'm excited to see what it will look like and to do it together.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I really appreciate the opportunity just to connect again.
Dope.
And to chat. And I love New City. You know, I hope that you guys continue to grow in influence, in people coming. You know, it's similar to Safe Families. Like I dream of a day where something like Safe Families doesn't have to be an organization. It's just something the church is doing.
Yeah.
In the same way, like if Simple Gatherings, you know, folds in a year and everyone is out just like be in the church, like that's fine. It's just not about building those things. And that's one thing I appreciate about you as well, is just a humility and a desire to see Christians grow, to see people come to know Jesus, and just for the church in general. And so I just love what you guys are doing. I love you. Yeah,
love you
I
too,
appreciate
bro.
your friendship.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So yeah, House Church leaders, take your group and spend some time in prayer. Pray for each other. Pray for Simple Gatherings. Don't rush through this. And then at the very end, if you can ask your kids workers to come up, we're actually going to take time to hear from the kids.
Right.
Hear what God has been speaking through them and to them.
Yeah.
And pray with them as well.
Beautiful.
And we are on a long break after this with New City. We've got like 3 or 4 weeks of no organized service over Christmas break.
Okay.
Next time we're back is January 15th.
Okay.
That's when we're back in a service. So really encouraging people to still connect, be in community, call each other up, go for dinner, shovel snow together, I guess. Like find ways to connect and be in community. And let's continue to do this thing.
That's great. Thank you.
Dope.